hear you're ready for your dose of reality. Welcome back to the Doctor Quack podcast. I'm Garden Sully. No, just kidding. I'm the doctor, and
I'm the important one, Mr. Mayhem. And as you can tell, I had to move down. This guy smells, and it isn't because he worked too hard on this podcast.
It is too. That's what I do. We got a treat for you today because we just reviewed Starcade 83, a Flair for the Gold.
I don't know if I'd call this a treat.
Well, it's not a good one. But this one right here. Yeah, Starcade 84. Let me tell you, I will say this. My good on it so far is the production value got better, except for the shaky camera up there where you had your hard cam going like this. See how my hands are? This is exactly what it was looking like.
They had a long way to go.
But let's review it here. Junior Heavyweight Championship, Mike Davis versus Denny Brown.
This was a face versus face match. It wasn't too bad. Denny Brown was kind of a jobber, enhancement talent. He did get a couple of runs with the Junior Heavyweight title. And I did get to wrestle Maniac Mike Davis. This was in 2000, about a year before he passed away. He was part of the Rock and Roll RPMs with Tommy Lane. And they invented a move called the Spandex Split that, while I couldn't find many videos and I don't remember much about it, it was banned in many places because it was injuring a lot of people. All in all, I always hate the lift the shoulder the last second, but that's the finish they chose to use. But I did give it 2.25 stars. It was a good show, good display of sportsmanship. The crowd seemed to enjoy it, so all in all, 2.25.
My favorite part of this match was the championship belt itself. Normally a title doesn't have excess stuff on top of it. This one had a crown, as you can see right here. This one had a crown, and it was beautiful. I was like, man, they should make more titles for this.
It was sharp, and they actually did that because there was some New Japan Pro Wrestling that had a claim to it, so they tried to, appease everybody, and then New Japan pulled out, so they changed the title shortly after this. But it was a very sharp-looking title, I will admit.
Yeah, I gave it 2 stars on that. And as you'll notice going down here, 84 was different from 83 because 84 went regional. They had a lot of their regional championship matches on here. You'll notice that a lot. Next match, Mr. Ito taking on Brian Adidas.
I've always known him as Brian Diaz. The NWA for this show seemed to call him Adidas. He was Brian Diaz in the Pacific Northwest. He was Brian Diaz when he did his big run with Al Madril in World Class. So I don't know why they chose Adidas.
Maybe they had a shoe company.
Who knows? And Mr. Ital was 44 years old at this time of this match. So he had been moving up on through the years. And he was always been kind of a rebel of the Puroresu. He was one of the first Japanese to do the bleach blonde look back when it wasn't polite, in the polite society of the Japanese. So this match really was kind of flat till the finish. They didn't really work very well together. I don't know if it was just an off day, because I've seen both of them have much, much better matches. I only went 1.5 stars.
Yeah, and I went exactly that rating, 1.5, wasn't long. It was the very first time in my lifetime that I actually seen an airplane spin used as a finisher. That really blew my mind. I know in the 70s it was a big move, but wow, in 84, I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah, I would have to agree. By that time, it was kind of the same way the Russian leg sweep. It was no longer impactful. It was kind of a setup move. So, yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise to see that, but a nice surprise.
Yeah. Next match here, Florida State Championship. Remember, like I said, the territories. Jesse Barr versus Mike Graham. And Earl Hepburn was the referee.
Yes, he was. Earl Hebner was the referee at this time, or actually just shortly before this time period. WWF was kind of still considered an NWA territory. It wasn't until Vince Sr. sold it to Vince Jr. So we had one Hebner working for the WWF, then WWF, WWE, then Earl Hebner was on the other side, and he did join his brother shortly after this. But Jesse Barr went on to be known as Jimmy Jack Funk, for those of you that remember that blip on the radar with Dory Haas and Jimmy Jack Funk. Mike Graham, a big talent in Florida. Jesse got his big break there in Florida before moving up to Pacific Northwest for a while after the WWF. The match was decent. It was good storytelling. They really tried to put over the wrestling prowess of Jesse Barr. I did give it 2.5 stars.
Yeah, I'm exactly on that rating, 2.5. I mean, Jesse Barr winning with the feet on the ropes. I felt like this was probably the best match that you've seen so far on this card. I felt like it was very solid.
It was.
You know, like it could have been better, but this is Starcade 84. This is not moving further along down the line, you'll see. But tag team elimination match. The Zambui Express with Paul Jones taking on the Assassin 1 and Buzz Tyler.
Oh, man. Where do we begin on this cluster?
Nowhere good.
First of all, the Zambui Express. That was Bad Leroy Brown and Ray Candy. They wrestled as Elijah, Ezekiel, and Kareem Muhammad, or something along those lines. They were a couple of big men who really were kind of going nowhere, so they teamed it with Paul Jones and turned him into militants. Their tag team didn't really work. They, in real life, didn't like each other. And then the Assassin #1, Jody Hamilton and Buzz Tyler, which Buzz Tyler was a name I didn't remember, so I did some research. He was a big deal in the NWA territory days. He won titles all over the territories, and he was his last title for the NWA. He was the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Champion, and in those days they used to give up a retainer for the belt, and then you get the retainer back with interest. Well, he put up his retainer for the Mid-Atlantic title. Dusty Rhodes didn't give him the money back, so when he left the territory, he took the title with him. So, with that being said, the crowd was really wanting to be hot. I mean, they enjoyed what they saw, but I don't know why. 1 star barely.
I gave it, 1.5. I felt like it was a disorganized match. I mean, when you're talking about elimination, one gets counted out, the other one gets pinned, and it was very short form.
And I remember Bob Caudle and Gordon Soley, when Kareem Muhammad got pinned, there was kind of some confusion in the ring, and all of a sudden everybody just left, and we get the explanation the other Zambui Express member got counted out. It never happened in the ring, so everybody kind of, for those of us watching, it was like, what? Wait a minute, what happened? So it was a disjointed mess.
And this time, you ended up seeing, after this match, Tony Schiavone interview Ricky Steamboat towards the match that happened later on. I will say this is where Tony Schiavone really did look great.
Yes, Tony Schiavone had a really good cadence for interviewing, giving keywords. He wasn't so great as the play-by-play guy because it's a different skill set. You don't cue the action in the ring because you're supposed to call it. So you're right. He really could have been the Mean Gene Okerlund of WCW, but instead he got in front of the camera to call the action. So
yeah, he was a much better interviewer. I really felt that. And then leading up to the next match here, Raging Bull Manny Fernandez taking on Black Bart with J.J. Dillon.
The Brass Knuckles title, which, for those of you that were not familiar, the Brass Knucks title was what they used to call the hardcore title. Basically, that was your fight. That was you come in, you want to see some blood, you want to see two guys just beating the crap out of each other. That was your Brass Knucks competition. And Manny Fernandez was known for those. At this time, he had just a month before, they talked about it in the show that he was a part of the tag team champions. Now, the NWA did not recognize a world heavyweight champion till many years after this show. It was like 89, I think, when they started recognizing. So this was the Mid-Atlantic version of the World Tag Team titles that he had just won with Dusty Rhodes a month earlier when they beat Ivan Koloff and Don Kernodle, which we'll get to in a little bit. All in all, this match was actually really decent. They both put on color. Kayfabe word of the day, color, means to bleed on purpose. So remember that. When you hear them talking about color or trying to get color, that's what they're talking about. It's to enhance the action of the match or the emotion of the match.
That's right.
So anyway, Manny Fernandez went over in a really good, strong match against Black Bart. And one other, to reveal it all, Black Bart was the person that trained us to wrestle. And for those of you that don't know who that is, that's Necro Butcher.
You want to learn your history, watch those two guys in general. You will see a contrast to styles, but you will see a toughness that is not matched very well with the rest of the world. Yeah, I loved it. 2.5 stars, great color. Manny bled like a pig. I thought it was great. J.J. Dillon being involved, you know. A lot of you didn't know this. He was a wrestler back in the days before he got into managing. And this, of course, is before he managed the Four Horsemen.
Yep.
So.
And in fact, speaking back, Buzz Tyler and J.J. Dillon were tag team champions at one time together as wrestlers.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, definitely. I gave it 2.5 stars. I felt like it was really just a great match leading, you know, through the card. You want to set the table, this was a good match. Now, the next one here, my opinion, this one did not set the table very well. This was the Tuxedo match. Loser leaves town. Tuxedo street fight. Paul Jones versus Jimmy Valiant. Boogie Man.
Alluding to his alliteration about setting the table, well, this is the horrible magician that tried to pull the cover out from underneath and just pulled everything off the table. This match stunk. Oh my God. One more, just for this match alone. Oh my God. This was an awful, disjointed mess. The story was that in Starcade 83, you saw Charlie Brown from out of town, who was Jimmy Valiant under a hood because he had been suspended by the NWA for reasons, storyline reasons. Now he was no longer Charlie Brown from out of town. He was the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant again, in a loser leave town match. He tied Paul Jones to the rope. He stripped him down. Paul Jones escaped and then pinned him. And Boogie Woogie Man lost. Awful. No, actually, the way it was is that Jimmy had him in the sleeper, and the referee dropped Paul Jones's arm 3 times, went to go ring the bell, and Kareem Muhammad came in. Jimmy Valiant hit the referee so they couldn't make the fall. Then he gets hit from behind, and Jimmy Valiant gets pinned. The referee wakes up and counts the pin like he forgot that he had seen the arm drop 3 times. This match was a mess. Half star.
Yeah, I have never given really anything below that, and this one gets that rating right there. Half star, I agree. Combined, we might make a star out of this, but that's going to be very difficult.
Oof, awful.
You know, God, you know. Moving along here. Dick Slater versus Cowboy Ron Bass. Mid-Atlantic Championship. Another regional title.
Yes, another regional title. This was mostly the East Coast regionals. 83, they did bring some talent from a couple other locations. This was mostly just the East Coast. Mr. Unpredictable, Dick Slater, and Ron Bass. The match, all in all, was good. They did put over that, they showed a clip earlier that J.J. Dillon had tied Dick Slater up, and Ron Bass and Tully Blanchard were beating up Ricky Steamboat. And so they put a good reason and a good explanation of why Dick Slater tried so hard to get J.J. Dillon. There were several times he was jumping out of the ring trying to get J.J. Dillon.
When they had that rope over his mouth holding him against the corner, that was just vicious.
And the crowd was white hot for this match.
Yes.
They were white hot. But the right ending happened. Ron Bass did go over in a 2 3/4 star match.
Yeah, I gave it 2.5. He won by DQ. I mean, I thought it was just overall, it was a great classic battle. It was, like I said, setting the table. This match helped that.
Yes.
Big time.
This kind of cleaned up the mess on the floor and started resetting the table in the right way.
Yes, it did. Ollie Anderson and Keith Larson with Don Kernodle versus the Koloffs. Tommy Young, by the way, was the referee in this. And if you don't know who Tommy Young is, you need to look him up. I'm telling you, this guy, in my opinion, is the most underrated referee of all time.
I would agree with that. He was smooth. He was always on cadence. He didn't give away the finish by counting it a little bit faster. Very, very good match. Now, the backstory on this one, for those of you that knew, Ollie Anderson had been a heel his whole time. Don Kernodle had turned on the United States and teamed with Ivan Koloff. And the month before that, Dusty Rhodes and Manny Fernandez took those titles from Ivan Koloff and Don Kernodle. This caused Nikita to come out and wrap a chain around his neck, around Kernodle's neck, and clothesline him. There is some talk that that may have been a real injury, that the reason Kernodle was not functional for this. And they tried to put over that Ollie Anderson and Don Kernodle have been friends for years. And so they brought in Keith Larson, who I had never heard of. Found out in real life he is Don Kernodle's brother. He wrestled later as Rocky Kernodle. Other than that, there's very little on Keith Larson out there except he was a jobber. There wasn't much to him. But this match, a very green Nikita Koloff. The faces started out way too long on the offense. I was surprised the crowd didn't start turning on the match. But they were really hot into it. Nikita was still very, very green, but it was a very good storytelling match. This was my 3-star of the night.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of those on this card, I'm going to tell you that. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars there. I felt like it was a solid victory for the Koloffs there. It helped out Nikita's career throughout the years. I mean, if you looked at that, overall, yeah, I gave it 3 stars as well. Next big match here, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Wasn't known as the Dragon at this time. Just Ricky Steamboat taking on Tully Blanchard, TV title. And I got to tell you, man, Tully Blanchard in this match, if you need to learn psychology, just watch how he works.
This was pre-Four Horsemen Tully Blanchard when he was Tully at his slimiest best. And I mean that in the best way possible.
Yeah.
They put over Steamboat's injury for the first half of the match. He was selling the ribs. It went away. I don't know if Steamboat forgot or they were trying to say that he had worked through it. I don't know what was going on with that. Mm-hmm. The match was very, very good. The only downside to this match, I did give it 3.5 stars, and I probably should have gave it 3 because the finish really made this one made Tommy Young look bad, but he had to because the referee isn't supposed to see the shenanigans. So I did give it 3.5 stars because the storytelling and the compellingness of this was the only match I didn't realize went 18 minutes. All these other matches, 11 minutes, I was like, are we done yet? This one, I didn't feel like I was watching a long match. I felt involved. I felt entertained. So 3.5 stars.
Yeah, I mean, I went with that as well. This was the other 3 I have. I gave that 3 stars. I thought it was hilarious, though, just when we were talking about the end there. He pulls out, it looks like, I guess, brass knucks, or maybe a tape fist or something. Referee is looking directly at Ricky Steamboat's head, and he nails him with it, and then puts it back in his trunk.
Yeah, it's in the middle of a sunset flip.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it was just like, wow, ref, how do you miss that? But, you know, it is what it is. You know, Tully came out with the victory. Yeah, I gave that 3 stars as well. This was a match that I was looking forward to when I saw it come up. Superstar Billy Graham taking on Wahoo McDaniel for the U.S. title.
Superstar Billy Graham had revealed a kung fu gimmick. I guess he was kung fu fighting or something like that. This is shortly before he put on the tie-dye and went back to the WWF and realized he needed hip surgery and hip replacement because steroids had addled his body to death. Wahoo McDaniels was always double tough. He was always kind of a tweener in that the crowd loved him, but he used kind of underhanded tactics. So it was really hard to tell who was the face and who was the heel for those that were not familiar with their work. And this match was just awful. There was no story to this match. The story was they were fighting for the U.S. title But all in all, it was who could do the silliest moves the best. This match basically broke down to Wahoo's chops, which were legendary, against the full Nelson. I wish I could explain it was better than 1 1/4 stars, but I just can't. 2 legends, and this was a 1 1/4 star match.
Yeah, I mean, I went a little higher. I gave it 2. I felt like it was a solid match. It should have went longer. But, I mean, McDaniels came out with a win. The fans popped for it. They were happy. It was nice to see Superstar in all his glory. That guy's muscles, let me tell you, that he is just huge.
That is true. He did have the pythons on full display.
I mean, I know he was gassed to death, and I seen that, and I'm sure you could easily see that. But, man, I mean, just gigantic there. And in the main event here, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, baby, taking on the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, in a world title versus $1 million purse. Winner take all on that.
Well, it wasn't versus the $1 million purse. They tried to put a little air of big fight feel. The purse was supposed to be $1 million to the winner.
Yeah, it was a purse there. The winner took that. Duke Kiyomoka and Kyle Petty were the judges in this as well. And you had a special guest referee, Smoking Joe Frazier.
This was the other match that didn't feel like it went too long. It went 12 minutes. I thought it went about 5. This was the start of the big, long Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes program that went into 85, where they will battle again, which you're going to see in future reviews. It should be coming up next, right?
Yep, that'll be coming up next.
Good. I'm glad I stole that run sheet that you had left in your office.
I was wondering where that went.
Well, now you know. I'll give it back to you when you give me my pay raise.
It's coming. We'll see about that.
But this led to the match in 85, which led to the creation of the Four Horsemen. So, in reality, this match meant more than this rating that I'm going to give it is. But this match just, Dusty Rhodes wouldn't sell. He'd stand there and get chopped, and he'd just stand there. His skin sold more than he did. Ric Flair tried to make this match passable. The finish was that he got thrown into the post and was bleeding near his eye. So the referee called the match because he was bleeding into his eye. Ric Flair went over. And I couldn't even give it 2 stars. I couldn't even give it 2 stars. 1 3/4.
You gave it 1 3/4. I gave it 2. I mean, I hated the fact that, you know, the finish, and you've seen it too, Flair was actually chopping him, and he wasn't landing here, buddy. He was landing up here. And you actually could see that on camera. I mean, with Dusty with the cut over his eye, you know, it was like watching a boxing finish, which, you know, Smoking Joe, I guess that's the way they wanted it. It was a huge disappointment for the fans. Really felt like that on such a letdown. I mean, you're talking about you had 2 3-star matches. You could have built that up better. You know, Flair, of course, wins by that. It really just kind of, I think, dampered down the end.
Yeah, this is one of those, for those of you that get mad at WWF when you have a screwy ending or something that doesn't make sense. This led to things that happened years later.
Yes.
That sometimes be mad at it, but don't condemn it or say it's the worst thing ever. See where they go from here next. Which NWA really picked up a lot of steam come 85, 86, 87, 88. And it was really, this was the start of that. Even though the match was bad, the history behind it really made this thing memorable from a all-encompassing view standpoint.
And you know, they actually, the post-game, I will give that, yeah. They don't really have that. Usually it ends after the main event. But this one got shortened a little bit. I'll give them credit on that. But still, why have a post-game? You know, you don't need to hear the interviews. Save that for the next show.
Exactly. Save that for the next show. Or you could do it there in the ring when people are still watching and paying attention. Usually when you see the logo, remote control. Or in this case, this was closed circuit. But either way, 10 minutes. It was 10 or 11 minutes of post-match. That's what boxing does. Wrestling should have been better than that.
Yeah, and you see later on down the line, they got better at it. But that's what we got for now. I'm your host, Dr. Quack.
And I'm the important one, Mr. Mayhem. Make sure you leave us likes and comment. We did a special one recently. We want to do your special episode, so please consult us and we'll take care of it. Coming up, Starcade 85. We advertised it. We talked about it here in the review. You're going to see it coming up, but we want to do your consultation before that.
And subscribe to our channel. And I'm out.